in which we have opportunities to nurture new life. As Christians, we are all called to be midwives. Midwives who nurture new hope, new imagination, new dreams. We're called to protect and to care for innocent words, fresh ideas. We're called to encourage new faith, new ministries, and new ventures. We are not the creator of new things, but God gives us the task of protecting, encouraging, coaching, and being part of all that is new. As students, as professors, as church members, as church leaders, we can all dream new dreams of what can be and what can be done in our communities of faith, in our churches, and in our families. And we have the opportunity to live fully into those dreams and do the work of starting, of planting, of beginning. But there's more to Shiphrah and Puah's story than just the fact that they were midwives. To know their story, you have to know the context. And we all know the story of Joseph. Joseph, the favorite son of his father. Joseph, the one with such a dysfunctional relationship with his brothers that his brothers sold him into slavery. And Joseph, poor Joseph, ends up in Egypt, living first as a slave, then as a prisoner, and finally as an advisor to Pharaoh. Joseph becomes a national hero, and because of his leadership, his people are saved during a time of great famine. But then Joseph died, and his leadership is forgotten, even by those rulers in Egypt. And along came a Pharaoh who saw Joseph's people, the Hebrews, not as an asset to the community, not as a stable workforce, not as productive citizens, but as a threat to his leadership. The Hebrews had grown so large in number, their population was so huge, that Pharaoh was threatened by them, and he knew that he had to control them, for they might rebel against him. They might side with Egypt's enemies. They might turn against Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh began to think about how he could ensure his own power over these Hebrews. And he came up with a plan. Like bad rulers throughout history, his plan was based on his own insecurities. But the plan was this: to appoint taskmasters over the Hebrews and to keep them working so hard that they would not have time to rebel. But Pharaoh's plan backfired. The Hebrews did not bend under the load. They did not break. They did not quit. The Hebrew people had a survival instinct. And not only did they survive, but they thrived. And Exodus 1 tells us that the more the Hebrews were pressed, the more they were multiplied and spread. So Pharaoh's foolproof plan didn't work. And he had to come up with a new plan. And Pharaoh paced back and forth, plotting and planning, thinking of ways that he could keep the Hebrews from growing numerically. And finally, a new plan emerged. And it was a shocking plan. It was a cruel and heartless plan. It was an unforgivable plan. For Pharaoh chose the path of infanticide. He chose to kill off all the innocent Hebrew baby boys. And the instrument of death would be the midwives. Pharaoh called in Shiphrah and Puah and told them that whenever a Hebrew slave woman gave birth to a baby boy, that baby boy was to be killed immediately. Now, imagining how the death of a baby would be implemented is just too gruesome to think about, too horrific to consider.